Paltrocast.
Aside from doing press, how is your day going so far?
Yeah, pretty good. It's a beautiful day out. So I have windows in my studio so I can actually see the outside.
That is a rarity. I don't know if I've ever been in a studio before that had windows. Is that a conscious decision?
I need it, yes. I need to be able to know the outside world exists. I always think that you can't just coop yourself up into a studio 24/7 because I feel like I discover things to say when I'm out there before I come into the studio. And so it's nice to be reminded of the world outside and carry it back in. So
You're not one of the nocturnal composers.
I mean, I will work 24/7 oftentimes. Yes, I will work into the late in the evenings. I'm actually an early riser. I could be working at 3 in the morning, getting up, if something strikes my interest. But yes, no, I like being able to at least see some daylight.
Well, we were connected because you have a new exciting release that Silver Screen Records is releasing the score to A Year on Planet Earth. At this point in time, you probably just have a wall of vinyl releases of your scores. Am I correct?
Yeah, I've had quite a few releases. I've been very fortunate so far in my career since I've moved to LA and been able to make music for a living, which is, a very lucky thing to do.
That was around 15 years ago you moved to LA?
I moved here, yeah, it would have been 2009. What year are we in now? 2023.
Yeah. Where'd you
yes,
move
I was
from
19,
originally?
almost 20 years old. I had dropped out of college after my sophomore year and started interning at Hans Zimmer studio remote control. And from there kind of worked my way up since then.
Well, which school did you drop out of and where did you grow up?
I grew up in Petaluma, California, which is just 45 minutes north of San Francisco.
Sure.
I was going to Sonoma State University. I had studied classical piano for about 15 years. And my grandparents own an opera house in my hometown called Cinnabar Theater. So since a young age, I was around music, around theater, but I was far more interested in the musicians off the stage than actually being on the stage. So that's kind of what led me to piano. I also studied trombone for 15 years and was just always interested in, rather than following what was on the page, kind of make up what I wanted to make up on page and not follow too many rules. So composition seemed like a natural fit, and I loved film, and I think I was just really moved by music that I would hear in film and television. So it's kind of an avenue I saw myself go down, and I had gotten the opportunity to work at Hans's studio as an intern. I was actually, in conjunction with music, I was a competitive gymnast for 15 years. And wow. I happened to coach a child whose parents had worked for Hans like 10 years prior. So it was kind of like watching both of my my activities cross paths, and it ultimately led me here.
Yeah, my weird name check thing, but my brother went to college with one of Hans's early proteges, James Dooley, who's done very well. And it's one of those things where I can't think of a better person to learn under than Hans Zimmer, because not just the awards, but the quality of the work and the number of titles that have Hans's name over the years. Pretty much no better composer out there, right?
Absolutely. It was, which is why I kind of chose to leave school at that point, because I was in school to do this, and there was not going to be a better schooling than that at that point. And I think it goes beyond having just a musical background and understanding music theory and history behind it. Yeah. But it's the music business, and it's understanding how to be in a room with directors, how to communicate with directors, how to pull across what these stories need. And there's, Hans Zimmer is the very best at that. And so I think that was one of the biggest takeaways, just being at his studio, was just learning how he is as a storyteller and how you translate music into ultimately serving the picture.
The last Hans question before I talk about you and your greatness further, did you ever get to meet Bryan Adams through Hans?
I did not get to meet Bryan Adams.
I heard he was around a lot, but anyway, hey, back to you here. So a compliment to you and your work is the diversity of the projects that you take on, not just the genres within the documentary world, but the channels. In other words, you don't go, oh, Josh is doing it. Okay, well, it's a Netflix thing. you know, you look at the Peacock and the Fox, etc. You've been able to work across all the different party lines. What was the first credit of yours that really led to all the other work and getting phone calls?
The first solo project that I did was a documentary called Winter on Fire, which was on the uprising in Ukraine. And that was, how many years ago now was that? It's a few years ago now. But that kind of was my first foray into being able to kind of do my own storytelling musically on, you know, without being underneath another composer. And from there, it kind of just led me to, the film did really well. We went to a lot of film festivals. It was nominated for an Oscar. So it kind of opens up some doors to meet other producers, particularly in the documentary world. And from there, I also then had, through working with the company Bleeding Fingers Music, I did Planet Earth 2, and that was also kind of a way that opened up doors for me to kind of go down a path of doing, I've done a fair bit of nature programs now, which are always an interesting challenge. And you're kind of doing every type of genre all within one, you know, series itself. So yeah.
Nature and The Black Godfather and Naomi Osaka, that really speaks to the versatility of the subject that you're able to work on. But one of the things I find as somebody who interviews a lot of composers is most of them are people who come from bad major label deals as musicians, as singer-songwriters. Now, you mentioned before the family business and opera, and I know you're classically trained. Were you ever a singer-songwriter?
I was not, although it's something that just always has interested me. And actually on this score itself, I was trying to tap into that just a bit more and structure some of these pieces more in a song-like manner. I used a lot of vocals in the score for Year on Planet Earth, a lot of vocals, percussion, guitars, and I was trying to kind of build my own band from it in that way. And you know, it's interesting the different styles of writing, the kind of different types of brain you have to use for it, because when you're writing a song, it's, you know, you're really starting to focus more on, you know, these key sounds, this certain structure, you know, as opposed to writing something that's completely classical and orchestral, where you can kind of go all over the place, and, you know, harmonically you're going to be doing lots of key changes and all, and you know, and it's a different side of brain. I both are very challenging in their own unique ways. So yeah, no, it's being part of, you know, working in operas. I think it was far more in the classical field at my grandparents' opera house. So, I mean, I remember seeing a musical for the first time, which is, you know, arguably a lot of musicals nowadays can steer more pop, or, you know, they kind of stretch across the genres. But I remember when I saw my first musical, I didn't even understand at my age why they were singing the way they were. I didn't understand why it didn't have the vibrato of an opera. And so I was just like, they sound really funny to me. And I remember saying that to my grandma. She's like, yes, it's not opera. This is a musical. It's different style. So, you know, that was just a funny experience at that age.
And not every composer can work Pro Tools or all the computer parts of the recording world. Did you know all that before you worked with Hans, or was that part of your training?
Absolutely not. I came to LA knowing Finale, like writing in sheet music, and that was basically, I had just gotten Logic Pro and I didn't know what I was doing with it whatsoever. And so that, you know, once I saw how music is made nowadays, it was a really eye-opening thing. And it was kind of, you know, not just understanding the music aspect, but really understanding the technology and understanding how it can serve you. And, you know, it opens up a lot of artistic doors that you don't quite even realize until, you know, suddenly you can make a sound from anything. And that's something that really has always interested me, is just how do you create music from not something just as traditional as here's an orchestra. And I definitely did a lot of exploring of that with this show. In particular, there was a sequence on monarch butterflies, and I actually went out into the middle of a forest and just recorded the ambience of it, the sound of the wind, sound of the trees. I took branches and clashed them together, and I brought that back into the studio, and I kind of chopped it up and turned it into percussive instruments, turned it into ambience. You know, there was like this sound of like all these like wings fluttering. And so I kind of used the wind and I kind of made a rippling, pulsing effect out of it and joined that with some other percussive sounds. So it didn't need to be, a violin and a piano for me. It could be anything as an instrument.
Even further difficult to define. I didn't know any of that, so I'm impressed further. Now, you don't have to say the names of the projects, but I'm curious how many things you're working on right now. Are you able to juggle multiple scores at the same time?
I have a couple projects going on right now. It's always a challenge. I think that speaks to a lot of just kind of where we're at in the music industry itself. And, that's you kind of, in order to be sustainable, you do have to take on probably more work than one person can take on. I'm very thankful to the music team that I always bring aboard this. I have a fantastic assistant, Carlos, who is always with me on every project, who, it takes a team to get these scores done, particularly if, you've taken on more than one project so that you can pay for the studio space and pay for all the things that, to keep your music business alive and going. So, yeah.
Did you, when you got into the whole composing game, understand music publishing, or did that come later?
Oh, that came way later. I had no clue about any of that. And, I'm still learning every day, just kind of understanding all the ins and outs of things. And, it's different too within the film television world, because oftentimes it's work for hire. So you're very much kind of, you're serving a purpose, a greater purpose of it. It's not just you're writing standalone music in that way. So that, it breaks it up even more in that capacity.
Until you take that final step where you go, I own the publishing, or you don't get me. You have that one project where you go, that's the terms. And then forever on the next project, you go, I own it. I mean, the last one gave it to me. Netflix gave it to me, and they go, oh, it did? Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
You're the guy who keeps
Absolutely. I think it's always important to remember that every project will not be your last. I mean, at one point it will be, but there's always going to be a next project and more music to write. And you just kind of have to keep writing. And, it's you can be really proud and excited by something. And then, I think 3 years later, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I remember doing that project, but I've grown so much since then.
Yeah.
And, I think that's what's exciting about writing music, is you're constantly discovering new ways to write and new avenues to explore. And I know what I was writing 5 years ago is not even how I would approach things today. And I keep wanting to push it further and further and go, okay, how can I sound different with every score? I don't want to rehash the same thing.
Well said. Well, my last question could be a stupid one, or it could be enlightening. And I'm curious, as somebody who makes a living from music, who studied it before they were doing it professionally, what's the last concert that you went to for fun? Meaning you have to go to this for fun. It's a hobby. It's not somebody that you're going to write for or write with.
What was the last concert I went to? I went to, it was actually back in December. I went to Home Alone being performed to the film. My partner loves Home Alone, and we just went to go see it played live. And I really love that experience, because you're just reminded of all the little quirks and things that go on in a score, but you can kind of visually see it happening while you don't normally see that when you're watching a film itself. And it is also just it was a testament to how much you can remember just from your childhood. I hadn't seen the movie for a little while, and I was picking up on little musical things that I could just remember happening. I was like, oh, this is going to happen, and then that line's going to happen. And it was all just kind of seamless with the music. And so, I think that's when you've written a really successful score, when people can remember it into that detail. And I know I wasn't the only one sitting in that audience that could do that.
Well, as somebody who watched the movie, and this is not your problem, but as somebody who rewatched Home Alone the last year or two, how is that a PG movie?
It's well, I guess it's the humor of it that's so absurd, and yet they don't make it's violent without being violent.
Yes.
It's just ridiculous.
You're lighting somebody on fire.
Yes. But there's not really any scars. There's no gore in it. Really.
There's no gore in it. Well, hey, congratulations on everything that you've got going on. If I were to interview you again in 4 months, I'm sure I'll hear about 3 more soundtrack releases and 6 more things in development. So hopefully you get some time off before the year's end, you know?
Thank you very much. Greatly
But
appreciate
thank you for your time and just keep up all the greatness out there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Paltrocast.